love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up, it's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, find almost anything. All it takes is some time and some clarity to find your identity. It's mind over everything. And when I feel like this, I'm immortal. 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 Don't be scared. Just give me up. And if you get in my way, you're gonna feel the wrath. Gotta say it to my face while he's looking back. Mirror breaks after math. When I hate, I attack. When I feel like this, I'm immortal. When I feel like this, I'm immortal. And when I feel like this, I'm immortal. 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 Don't be scared. Just give me up. Don't be scared.
Alrighty, boys and girls, hello. Hope you're all having a good day. Let's get this show on the road. Well, I hope none of you are too surprised. Just give me a second. I'm going to get everything set up here. Hope you can see the screen and hear me well. Important for that. Alright, let's get this show on the road. Hello, Danny. Hello, Shazana. Hello, Johnny. Hello, Nannies. Hello, Cool Beans. Let's get it running now. As you can see, we opened up with a decent gap today. The market had a bit more of a negative sort of direction in the pre-market, but normally, as we know, normally when gaps do open up and we're not biased in any direction, doesn't matter whether the gap is up or down, if they're not too big, we always expect the gaps to get closed relatively shortly, especially if the momentum is permissive. Now, our gap, if you just think about it for half a second, even within the 1 minute time frame, looking at the very narrow, sort of very fast channel, we will realize that really we are already within the framework of, right? So basically we're already there. And so this thing should be within the framework of the channel. So we should be able to close it up without too much effort, and all it is basically making it all the way to the end of the channel, the median of the channel, sort of that closer range, closing it with a little bit of slippage, and we're all done. Now, the 1 minute momentum is slightly dying down as we're getting closer. It does not necessarily mean we're not going to have what it takes to close this gap. In fact, let's look at the 5 minutes, which most likely will imply that we do. The fact of the matter that we are already in overbought territory on the 5 minutes does permit us a little bit more momentum, although we'll be having some switch overs back and forth in the overbought territory. Within the 5 minutes, if we assess and sort of look at, let's say this 5 minute set will be done within about a minute and a half, then we'll have at least 2 more sets that I can predict will stay within the framework of the overbought territory, or at least one, which gives us, of course, 5 minutes. Now that we look at the 30 minutes, on the other hand, we are, although still in oversold territory, so generally sort of in the court of the bears, and so the bulls are very underpowered. And still, underpowered or not, we are objectively right now going through a short period, which is in oversold conditions, which means, again, it cannot be too strong. If we zoom out, we realize the confines and the real levels at which we're working with right now. Yes, the market is looking very choppy. That is oftentimes something we get before a very sort of weak market in terms of direction. It ends up being very bearish, basically saying weak, the markets are not able to buy, right? As you can see, we are going towards a crossover on the 45 minutes, but still remember that it is within the confines of oversold conditions. Basically, it's giving way for the bulls some time within the framework of, or in the court of, the bears. So basically they are very, very underpowered. The dominance still remains with the bears. Plus, it's not yet concluded. We are still in process. But given how conditions are set up as they are right now, it's arguably very obvious that we will transition and we'll have a crossover here, and the bulls will become dominant, if temporarily so, and if underpowered, still enough to close that gap arguably. In fact, maybe retest slightly higher, but still within the framework of the vicinity of where this gap ends. So we're talking roughly about 5,650-ish, give or take. Now, on the 1 hourly, on the other hand, we're full on bearish still, and can assess that for the following hour will still be bearish. And so basically this gap, all it does, it, at least for the period of time that we see, give or take from the 1 minute range and to the hourly range, we identified that the market, if it sort of pushes so strongly in both directions and contradictive, it's not going to be all that surprising if what we're going to get is more of that sort of flatter market, almost like trying to pull in both directions but not able to succeed simply because it's underpowered in both directions. Now, at some point there will have to be a tiebreaker, right? And we're going to kind of arrive at that tiebreaker. That tiebreaker is the 4 hourly. The 4 hourly is already signaling that we are about to have more of a bearish trend, which in other words, what we're saying here is pretty simple. If we're going to have a shorter period within which we're going to have this inconclusive price action, staying within the framework of sort of the range we're in right now, again, giving it some numbers, sort of numerical representation, let's call it 5650, 5670 maybe. Since we've closed all the gaps above, we don't have any issues with that at the moment. And so the market is prepping up a severe movement to the downside that, of course, will cross the 5500. By the way, closing the remnant gap that we have from this side of things, as you can see, we have just a little bit of a gap between these sort of two edges of things. Pardon me 1 second. And so what we're expecting is, if today's session will remain more or less flat, just like these smaller time frames are indicating, overall into either the next session or towards the end of this session, because normally what we get over a single session are 2 4-hour candlesticks, and so once this is closed within 2.5 hours ish, we still have one more candle to be made today. Hello, Tom Nash. Palantir. Come on. You knew about it and you were warning. And this time around, I have to give you all the credit. You were warning and saying, yes, it's unpleasant, but we all understand it has nothing to do with Palantir. Very true. And in fact, it's not Palantir, it's Palansmile. You know why? Because look at the other assets. You want to know how another asset, for example, right now is looking like, or sort of how the momentum is being, designed? A lot worse. Well, Meta maybe is not exactly the perfect example, but you know what? Let's look at our sort of usual suspects. Let's look at Tesla. Let's look at Tesla, which is of course big mayhem on my chart. That's just amazing. Let's just remove the drawings. Look, for example, again, Tesla is actually doing worse, objectively speaking. Of course, you can argue that, blame Elon and all sorts of wonderful things. You know what? Let's look at other things. Let's look at a firm that was running hand in hand with Palantir. They are doing so much worse. Realistically, they're doing so much worse that if we're looking objectively at how well Palantir is doing, I mean, can we really be complaining in all objectivity, let's see, what else? So what else we want to compare to? Let's talk about NVIDIA, for example, right? NVIDIA is doing a lot worse. In reality, Palantir really was able to retrace to such a high level that it's phenomenal. Can't hear over Grandpa's crying. No, just shouted that I wanted to buy my farm for 108. What? Smash the like. No, absolutely. Smash the like. It's free, I promise. So definitely recommended to do. Apple is actually doing a lot better than it should be. But again, yeah, the whole overall tech sector is not doing all that phenomenally, and compared to everybody else, Palantir is actually doing really, really well. I mean, it's currently residing on a very strong support, which is 108, literally like how Tom and I spoke about today. Tom knows I've shown him this level. I warned that this is going to be an area of contention for the market, and we were going to be sort of retesting it. And we have another level here, by the way. If I've mentioned, we have 103, very similar, very sort of short-term range, creates 103.41. Then you have 100, which is a very strong psychological level. As you sort of see it, we're getting this almost layered cake of levels, which are going to be very, very difficult to break through every single level. And so actually, Palantir is doing phenomenally better than everybody else. Apple is doing relatively well. For example, I've expected Apple already to start seeing like worse levels, and so they're kind of taking their sweetest time. NVIDIA, of course, is doing exactly what we said and is going to be breaking very, very rapidly, but it's all intertwined and connected to the fact of the matter that the market on the 4 hours, which, by the way, it's not all that weird. I mean, you know what? 4 hours, problematic on SPX, right? We're in line. If we go to Palantir and switch to 4 hours, guess what we have here? We have here a very similar problem. We are now entering oversold conditions, right? Now, once we will enter oversold conditions, guess what? We accelerate to the downside. And this pattern, by the way, is very well known in the market. It's almost like that Tetris shape. If you guys remember, we had that very annoying shape in Tetris. It looked like so, right? And it works actually both ways. So again, you can actually have a pattern of a green long tall candlestick with a small a red one, corrective red one, just kind of looks like so, pardon me, my inability to draw, and then another tall green one, and vice versa. We have that pattern of descent. So basically what it is a movement, a motive movement to the downside, a corrective movement to the upside, and then a continuation of another motive movement to the downside. It's the very same way we oftentimes see when we trend to the upside, right? To when we're bullish, when the price is ascending, we're oftentimes seeing something very similar in terms of pattern. It's in fact not also difficult to find, although right now, because I said it, I'm going to struggle to find one. But generally speaking, sort of that overall pattern, for example, if I'll go to a larger time frame, we'll find that very same pattern in these set of candlesticks. As basically these will combine to be a singular larger candlestick, right? Just kind of highlight how that pattern happens, right? That this is very indicative of a bearish movement forward, right? When we have this sort of pattern, here it is. It's going to appear on the daily far clearer. Here you can kind of see it similar, but not exactly what I was looking for, but you get the idea. Where oftentimes you're going to have this very tall candle, a green candlestick in this instance, red one subsequently, and then another green one. So now we're kind of getting the opposite, but internally here. Let's go So we were on the 4 hours. We were highlighting how things are not great on the 4 hours on Palantir. We were also right here on the 4 hours and saying how not great everything is here on this side. Grandpa will need to go back working. I'm going to pay this. At least I hope he'll be smuggling some really good whiskey. Can I get some tequila, sir? Some Mexican tequila straight from Mexico, sir? Can I get some? We're in dire need. So as we progress through the time frames, we actually learned that it's a lot worse than I'm sort of saying. If we're looking at the SPX, give me a second. I really need to clear my throat. Half a sec, boys and girls. Thank you for holding on. Now, this, I predict that it's not necessarily going to be a straightforward process. As you can see, oftentimes we have here a three-pronged process that oftentimes sort of happens at the end right here. So it's not going to be all that surprising if around the 80 we're going to have another retest post-convergence divergence around here and a continuation of the channel. That convergence divergence crossover, if you will, can happen also around the 50. So before we see any signs on smaller time frames that convergence divergence is coming, there's no reason to assess that we're about to have one. Currently, if we just want to stay objective at what we're saying, we are saying, pardon me, we're not saying anything this way, of course, but what we are saying is that we're again having divergence on the in the overbought area, which is starting to force us to be pointed to the downside, moving us quicker to 80. 80 is a signal that we're becoming quicker bearish rather than bullish, right? And of course that plays very neatly into my thesis that I've been telling you, that we will have that very same behavior that we say around 50 if we stop, if we end up slowing down around the 50 and we have convergence of the forces and start reverting back. What it means that we've stayed bearish all along and we're now continuing an accelerated movement to the downside. So what we end up with is, let's say, 100% movement to the downside. In this instance, actually very severe 50% movement to the upside, corrective, right? And whatever motive movement we're going to have this time around, of course, 100% of its own self, or in comparison to something else, of course, depending. But what we assess here is at least a bare minimum of a sort of staged gradual process towards 4,800, which you can see the level right here on the screen. In fact, there are lower levels. Of course, there are intermediatory levels and there are plenty of them, which we can't see on the screen right now, but it's 5,000, for example. We have, in fact, let's not forget, we have a level every $100. We have 5,500, for example, is very strong. We have 55, 55, 55, or 55, 55. Really, it's kind of a shtick right there. We have 5,200, 5,100, 5,000, 5,900, 4,900, sorry, and 4,800, right? So all that gradual descent process, in fact, in between says Grandpa's fault, Greg's fault. It's all Greg's fault. Of course, it's Greg's fault. What do you mean? It always is Greg's fault. It's simple. That's how it works. In fact, the entire market moves because I say it's going to move. I mean, which teaches you for future just to listen to what I say. And again, here's that asymmetrical symmetry sort of phenomenon that I've been saying. Look, if this is the head, right, on both ends, here is the sort of smaller shoulder, and that we're starting to have right here. I exaggerated, sorry, that was not meant, but you get the idea. Both shoulders are kind of in relative ends of the process, and they're kind of in relative size, in fact rely on very similar supports and resistances, but they're not identical, right? They're not meant to be identical. If we're saying this is coming, so here is that second sort of shoulder completing the movement and processing sort of some of the levels that we've already gone through again, which will conclude, by the way, that let's say we're looking at these levels. This is once, twice, thrice, fourth time, fifth. So basically it's about 5 times that we ended up crossing and moving through these very same levels until we acknowledge that we're not there, not ready, or being rejected to the downside. So if anyone has any doubts about the retest amount of these levels, it's insane. And we're looking at the weekly, so these things have been retested for quite a while and over and over and over. And again, we're not looking, well, we don't really have that. I'm insane. Well, we shouldn't be going there because we have nothing there, of course. But what we do have is the understanding of that very same symmetry plays along on larger scales. And if right now we're just merely moving through what is hidden inside the larger sort of continuous long-term upwards trend that we had prior, guess what? Our downwards trend, as we're continuing to the downside, is not going to be all that surprising if later at the bottom of that sort of cycle of things, roughly around 43, maybe 45-ish. There are plenty of levels there that may stop us. 45 actually has a very, very strong level that is not acknowledged on this chart right now. 4,500, very, very strong. So basically, again, there are a huge multitude, an actual layered cake, if you will, again, layer after layer after layer that we have to break and retest on our way down. And not every single layer will be very easy. Most of these layers will be actually very difficult to break through. So that's that. What else we want to talk about? You know what? Why not? Let's just kind of look at what changed with the 3 months. Well, that's nothing, because, yeah, we still have a month and well, roughly about 2 months, in fact, entire full month, 2 months, to see where this price action will take us. But now we're predicting, or the price action's current momentum giving us a reading of a continuation to the downside, right? So from here on out, people may not whine and say, oh, Greg, you didn't say, you didn't warn. I'm screaming off of the rooftops. Those who are not here to listen to it nor watch it, it's their problem. This is as much as I can do, you know. They can cry me a river afterwards. I'm saying it. Guys, the market is right now appearing to be very bearish, pointing and signaling very distinctively, very obviously, that the market is going to continue with this downwards trend that we've had from before. In fact, consider the lows that we had at 4,800 area. It appears to be that since we are starting at a point that is not as high where we were, we may end up very, very quickly in a far lower level. I know a lot of people are right now very confused and think they see an inverted head and shoulders here. What you don't realize that your inverted head and shoulders has already happened. Here it is. Here is your head, here is your shoulder, here's your second shoulder, and here is your trend up that needs to happen. Yes, it has already happened, and from here on out, guess what? Downwards. So yes, this is all very normal and played out exactly as it was meant to by the cyclical sort of, you know, uniform structure of things, which brings me, by the way, how did we know about all these things? If you haven't yet signed up or you're not yet aware, I have a one-on-one tutoring. One of my members actually highlighted that it's not clear. When I say one-on-one tutoring, that means, as you can see on the screen, right, it sort of involves and entails a whole bunch of perks and things and subjects that I will be going through and teaching you, and much more that currently is appearing on the screen. The way it's done is pretty simple. We meet up on the Discord, which I'm going to show in a second. That's how my Discord looks like. In fact, as you can see, when I go live, I inform my members. Sometimes, sadly, the bot is far behind me. That's why my members are always on time. They know, hi, Johnny. Hello, Leo. Hi, boys. Hope you're having a good day. We have, of course, our main chat and all sorts of cool stuff. Here are the testimonials. I'm gonna quickly sort of skim over the various channels we have here. Again, from my positions to charting 101, basics and whatnot. But the most important channel here to know, since we're talking about the One-on-One Academy, where I teach you the same way you would hire a tutor for your kids, you know, to teach them math or language or whatever that is. I hang out with you in a one-on-one on channel based upon the schedule we define, right? Based upon your convenience and my convenience. We meet up once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, every day of the week other than weekends, if that's what you decide, if that sort of works in the schedule. We meet up and, just as you can see and read through the recommendations and sort of testimonials of my previous students, how that whole experience goes, what can you expect. So again, I think these testimonials speak for themselves. And I currently, by the way, just to highlight, I have just one open spot. Yes, I am expecting to have some more spots open up soon when more students will finish up. As you can see, by the way, all these blue members are Academy students, and there are plenty more people who are currently not online. So, of course, I'm not going to shout them out. Of course, Tom Nash, a brother from another mother, which, by the way, those who think that we like have beef or whatever, I mean, yeah, we disagree on things, but that's normal. That's what good friends do, and we still remain friends. And I'll highlight that this entire thing, my community, this channel, none of it would have existed if not Tom Nash. So, again, a huge thank you for a brother from another mother. Without him, none of this would have been a reality. So, definitely join my community, join the academy. That way you will know exactly how we were able to predict these various movements. In fact, if you watch my lives and live videos on YouTube and pretty much anything and everything, by the way, which my members get a lot of exclusive stuff. I almost forgot to mention, we just had a members meeting, which of course is exclusive and only for them. I need to upload that. Of course, we have academy meetings that are exclusive for the academy members. We have here a separate archive. And another very important thing to highlight, my members here in the Discord get ad-free content, members exclusive content, stuff that most average people, even if they get it sort of a little bit later. My members know about everything when I'm still working on it, when it's still in the works, and they should know about things in advance. So highly recommended to join the community just for these perks. Right now, by the way, the advanced tier is 60% discounted. Just to be clear about things, if you go to the Patreon and sign up, the current tier, you don't need any promo codes, none of that crap. You just simply go and you sign up. Right now, the advanced tier, which allows you to have 2 members meetings a week and plenty of other stuff, all of these wonderful perks, as I said, is now 60% discounted. That tier will be going to $100 within roughly about a couple of weeks from now, maybe 3, maybe 2, we'll see. We're kind of deciding on that right now. 2 to 3 weeks, that's all the time you have to sign up to the advanced tier before it gets locked, and that will be it. And then it will be basically moved to a cost of $100 for that tier. Now, what else is important to highlight? There's not much to highlight. Again, let's recap. The market, as far as I can tell, is still planning to close this gap. This is something we can identify on the 30 minutes chart. It is still pointing to the upside, although currently struggling with the momentum. It's still, if you ask me, based upon my experience and how it is appearing at face value right now on the indicators, I would argue that it still have enough in the system, in the pipeline, so to speak, to close that gap. And when it does, we're going to see a continuation of the downwards pressure. And it might happen today or tomorrow. It doesn't matter. We are not here to time the market. We don't do these sort of things. What we understand, what we measure the market. We identify strong points of contention where the price is being contested one way or another. When we have stronger supports or resistance levels that come into play, we're looking at the momentum. We're looking at factual, tangible forces that are taking place right now actively in real time in the market, and judging upon them what should be sort of our understanding of the next steps, or maybe even what sort of action should we take, if at all. Of course, none of it is financial advice. You're all adults, should be able to be responsible for your own portfolios, take your own actions, and that sort of stuff. Now, what else? I think that is it. I'll just tell you that, sadly, I was right about Palantir, and things are looking very, very unfortunate for Palantir, and overall the tech sector, and in general the market. It's not something that I'm too happy about. Remember, I'm not bearish, I'm not a default bear or anything of this sort. I'm just objectively saying what is currently happening. I currently have my SQQQ position, which basically plays upon that very play or assessment of the market's action, which will be adverse. So if the market goes down, my SQQQ goes up. Pretty simple. It's not, God forbid, that's not an investment. That is a current trade that is just very lucrative under the conditions. It has red days, it has green days, it has the whole mix. But at the end of the day, it should yield profits under these unpleasant conditions. I'm not saying it's a good idea for anyone and everyone. In fact, I'm saying don't do this unless you understand this in depth. But I openly say how I'm positioned. I'm not shorting the market directly. I don't do that. I don't do leverage. I don't do options. What I do is I join an army, a big squad, a unit of forces that are basically shorting themselves the market. Yes, it does get rebalanced. Yes, it does have time decay. It does also have dividends, which are not that crazy or excessive, but they pour back into the asset, which gives me a higher multiple, resulting at the end of the day with a decent return, at least under very troubling and sort of, difficult times, if you will. Again, you do you. This is not financial advice at all, definitely. But if you can think about it, again, if we're saying that the continuation of the downwards pressure comes in, this is a valid play. And that's it, boys and girls. I think that's all I really wanted to highlight and say and talk about. Yeah, I'll see you in the community. I'll see you on the next one. Remember, we're not really doing stock analysis anymore here. Now, from now on, all the stock analysis is done purely for the community members. The members we have a meeting at which they offer stocks and ask about particular assets, and we go together over the analysis, in which way they can do some back and forth instead of this very inconvenient thing we do on YouTube, and it's a lot more interactive. So plenty of perks in the community and the Discord, as I said. Don't miss out, join in. That's it, boys and girls. Like I said, for the final time,